Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. So today, we're going to be looking at the future of baby making.
Oh, wow.
That's right. We're going to be asking, is it possible that we could be growing babies in labs?
Okay.
Or even creating clones?
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds crazy, right?
It does sound like something out of a movie or something.
Right, like straight out of science fiction. But
Yeah.
we've actually got some really interesting sources that you guys sent in.
Oh, wow.
And they deal with exactly that.
Yeah.
So we've got a YouTube video all about this facility called Ectolife,
Okay.
and an article that talks all about the potential of human cloning. And we've even got some YouTube clips from a bunch of different folks talking about like all the implications of this whole thing.
Yep.
So
The implications really are something.
yeah.
We're not just talking about some like abstract thing here, you know.
Oh, right.
This is real research, and it can completely change how we think about family and even life itself.
Absolutely. So let's start with this Ectolife facility.
Oh.
I mean, you are not going to believe this thing.
Right.
They're calling it the world's first artificial womb facility. And it's completely powered by renewable energy.
That's right. And they make some pretty bold claims in this video.
Right.
Like, just imagine this massive building filled with 75 labs, and each one of those labs has 400 of these pods, and they're calling them artificial wombs.
Oh, wow.
And they're saying that a single facility like this
Yeah.
could incubate something like 30,000 babies every single year.
30,000 babies.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling.
It's hard to even imagine, right? And so this whole concept, it's actually rooted in real science. It's called ectogenesis.
Okay.
And that's basically the development of an embryo, but outside of the body. But we have to keep in mind that a facility like this is still a ways off.
Sure.
I mean, there are some really big technological hurdles that we've got to overcome before this could ever become like a day-to-day thing.
Okay, so they're obviously very, very ahead of themselves in this video. For sure. But, I mean, they do bring up some benefits that I think are worth talking about.
Okay.
Like, imagine if we could eliminate premature births, C-sections,
Okay.
and just the pain of childbirth in general.
Yeah, I mean, while those benefits are really worth thinking about,
Right.
I think we also have to keep in mind the risks and the ethical considerations that come along with artificial wombs.
Sure.
It's definitely not a simple equation.
No, definitely not. And you know what else they talk about?
What's that?
They've got this thing called the Elite Package.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And apparently this would allow parents to actually use CRISPR-Cas9 technology to genetically engineer their babies. So I've heard of CRISPR.
Okay.
Could you maybe break that down for me and for our listeners?
So imagine if you could just edit the code of life like you're fixing a typo.
Okay.
That's kind of what CRISPR is like.
Yeah.
It's a gene editing tool that lets scientists make very, very precise changes
Wow.
to DNA. And it can do some pretty amazing things like correcting genetic defects.
Right.
Or even potentially enhancing certain traits.
So does that mean that like parents could choose their baby's eye color,
Yeah, potentially.
hair color, their height,
It's possible.
maybe even their intelligence?
So that's the whole idea behind designer babies.
Okay.
And it's super controversial because when you're able to manipulate genes like that, it makes you wonder, you know,
Right.
should we really be creating humans
Right.
with specific characteristics that we pick out?
Yeah, that's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, and some experts are worried that it could lead to some unintended consequences or genetic problems later down the line.
And we actually had some folks in these YouTube videos
I know.
talking about that.
Yeah, and others are worried that it could even make social inequalities worse.
Oh, how so?
Well, because what if only rich people can afford to use this technology?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a real Pandora's box, and we're only just starting to understand what all of this could mean.
Okay, so we've got babies growing in labs and parents picking out their kids' treats like options on a car.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It is crazy. So
Okay.
now let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Human cloning.
All right.
This article that we have starts with the story of Dolly the sheep.
Oh, yeah?
And she was the first mammal to be cloned from an adult cell back in 1996.
Yeah. Dolly's creation was a huge scientific breakthrough, but it also really got people talking about the ethics of cloning,
Right.
especially when it comes to humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the article talks about this process
Okay.
called somatic cell nuclear transfer.
Uh-huh.
Which honestly sounds very complicated, but basically what they're doing is taking DNA from an adult cell, and they're putting it into an egg cell that's had its own DNA removed.
Right.
And if everything works out, the embryo becomes a genetic copy of the original person.
It's like hitting copy and paste on a living organism.
Right.
But remember, a clone wouldn't just be some mindless duplicate, because environmental factors and experiences really shape who we are. You know? So a clone wouldn't be exactly the same in terms of personality or behavior.
So they'd still have like their own thoughts, like their own feelings.
Their own experiences. They'd be their own individual just like everyone else.
Gotcha. Now, one of our YouTube videos features this pastor.
Okay.
Asking a really fascinating question.
Oh, what did that?
He's asking, would a clone have a soul? And that is a question that goes way beyond science.
Yeah, it really does.
And it goes into like philosophy and theology.
Right.
And I think it really shows just how many different perspectives we've got on this technology.
It does.
So this pastor, he's arguing that every human life is sacred and created by God.
Right.
And he's suggesting that even a clone, even though it's created artificially, would still have a soul.
Yeah. And we also have this other YouTube video.
Okay.
And it has a scientist
who's saying that consciousness comes from how the brain works.
Oh, okay.
So because a clone has the same brain structure, it would probably develop consciousness and a sense of self, just like any other human.
Wow. So we've got theologians and scientists all weighing in on this.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like cloning is forcing us to answer some pretty big questions.
Yeah, like what makes us human?
Exactly.
A huge question.
Huge questions. And this is a conversation that's probably going to keep going.
For sure.
As this technology gets better.
Absolutely.
Now, this article also brings up some of the reasons why we might even want to clone humans in the first place.
Oh.
And there are some good reasons and some bad reasons.
Okay.
So on the one hand, some people think that cloning could lead to some amazing medical advancements.
Like what?
Like imagine if we could grow organs for transplantation that are a perfect match for the patient. So like no more organ rejection.
Wow, that would be incredible.
Right. But then...
there's also that darker side.
Yeah, what if people start creating humans just for specific jobs?
Right.
Or what if they start building armies of super soldiers?
It sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it really does.
A scary movie.
Yeah, it's straight out of a dystopian sci-fi film.
Right.
And those fears aren't totally unrealistic.
Right.
There are a lot of people who are worried about cloning being used for bad things.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have really strict rules.
Yeah.
And for countries to work together to make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
You have to make sure that this technology is only used for good and in ethical ways.
So what about the clones themselves? I mean, would they just be seen as copies?
Right.
You know, always living in the shadow of the original person. Like, wouldn't that mess them up psychologically?
That's a really good point. And one of the experts in the videos said, you know, even identical twins who share all the same genes.
Right.
They still end up being different people.
Yeah.
With their own personalities.
Yeah.
So a clone wouldn't be an exact copy.
Okay.
But they would be shaped by their own unique experiences.
Okay. So it's clear that both ectolife and human cloning are taking us into uncharted territory.
Completely uncharted.
I mean, like, where do we even begin to draw the line?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
I mean, as science keeps pushing the boundaries, we as a society need to have a conversation about the ethics of it all.
We've covered so much already, but I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
Oh yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
What's really standing out to you so far? What are you finding the most interesting?
Let me think about that for a second. But you know what's really got me thinking is how all this tech could change what family even means.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, like if we're creating life in a lab, what does that even mean for parents?
Right.
And like, you know, aunts and uncles and all that.
Yeah, and a few of the YouTube videos actually touch on that. And there's this one theologian who is really concerned that this could like weaken families.
That's correct.
And that it could lead to a breakdown of like values and morals.
You know what's interesting though?
Yeah.
Because other religious leaders actually have different takes on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of them think that this tech could actually be a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, even for reproduction. Like they think it could be used responsibly and ethically.
Okay.
And there's this rabbi in one of the clips who said that this could really help families that are struggling with infertility or genetic diseases.
Okay.
So maybe this could actually make family bonds stronger.
Oh, wow. So it really runs the gamut there.
It really does. It's a very complex issue, and it shows how complicated things can get.
Yeah.
When you bring tech and faith together.
Oh, sure.
Like, different religions are going to have to figure out how to deal with all this.
Absolutely. All right, so speaking of dealing with this stuff, what about the legal side of all of this?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like, what about the legal rights of clones?
Right.
Would they have the same rights as everybody else?
Right. Would they be able to inherit things?
Could they vote?
Could they be arrested?
Yeah. Would they be subject to the same laws?
Yeah. Lawmakers and legal experts are going to have to figure all that out.
Yeah.
If cloning actually becomes a thing.
It's like a whole new area of law.
Totally.
And it could change everything.
Yeah. Inheritance, family law, criminal law.
Like, what if there's like a custody battle over a cloned child?
Wow.
Or like, what if a clone commits a crime?
Yeah. Who's responsible?
Right.
That's wild.
It's so much to think about.
It really is. But it's also a chance for us to like take a step back.
Okay.
And really look at our legal system and make sure that it's ready to deal with all these new situations.
In a fair way.
In a fair and just way.
Yeah, for everybody.
Exactly.
Okay. I also wonder how people would react, like, socially.
Oh, yeah.
If cloning became, like, normal.
Yeah, would they be cool with it?
Would they be afraid of them?
Yeah, would they, like, welcome clones?
Yeah.
Or would they think they're, like, unnatural or something?
Yeah, and this article talks about how sci-fi movies have really made cloning seem like a bad thing.
Oh, yeah, like Blade Runner.
Right. The Island?
Totally.
They're not exactly painting a pretty picture of cloning.
No, they're not. But, opinions can change.
That's true.
Yeah, the article brought up in vitro fertilization.
Okay.
Like IVF.
Yeah.
And it used to be this really radical, controversial thing.
Right.
And now it's like totally normal.
Yeah, it's just how some people have kids now.
Yeah, exactly. So as people get more used to these new technologies and they start to see the good things that they can do, opinions can totally shift.
And maybe that could happen with cloning too.
Maybe.
But it would take a lot of like open conversations and education.
Yeah, and people using it the right way.
Right, to get past all the fear.
Exactly.
When you think about cloning and these artificial wombs, it really makes you wonder, what does it even mean to be human?
That's a big one.
And one of the YouTube videos takes like this really philosophical approach. And it asks like, how could this change how we think about being an individual?
Okay.
And even free will. Like, if we can just make copies of ourselves, does that make us less special? Does it mean we don't really control our own lives?
Wow, those are questions that philosophers have been trying to answer forever.
Right.
But this new tech is like bringing them back up.
Yeah.
It's making us really think about what it means to be a person.
Right.
The meaning of life.
Yeah.
And how much control we really have over nature.
And the crazy thing is that it's not just theoretical anymore.
It's not.
Like, this could actually happen.
Right. We might have to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
In the real world.
Very soon.
Yeah. It's a crazy time to be alive.
It really is both exciting and scary. When I was watching that Ectolife video, I was blown away by how big they're thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're talking about 30,000 babies a year.
From one building.
From one facility.
It's mind-blowing.
Like a whole town of babies.
Yeah, it's a wild concept. And even though we can't do it yet, it makes you think about what these facilities could mean for society.
If we had tons of them.
Yeah, how would it change population growth?
Right, where would all the resources come from?
How would we all live together?
Yeah, it's not just the science. It's like the whole world changes.
It's social, economic, political.
Yeah.
Wow. It affects everything.
And it makes you realize that these discoveries, they don't happen in a bubble.
Right.
They're connected to everything.
They're part of the world.
Exactly. All right. So this article on cloning, it brings up another concern.
What's that?
Commodification of human life. Like, if we could just clone people, would that make life seem less valuable?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And would rich people just start buying designer babies?
Why?
With all the traits they want?
That's a scary thought.
It really is, and it shows how important it is to have rules so that people don't get exploited and treated like objects.
Yeah, tech needs to help people.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Exactly. So there's this bioethicist in one of the YouTube clips.
Okay.
And she makes a really good point.
Okay.
She says that we need to be open and honest.
About what?
about developing this tech.
Oh.
Like, we need to talk about the risks and the benefits so that people can trust each other.
Okay.
And make good decisions.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Scientists can't just do this on their own.
Right.
Everyone needs to be involved.
Yeah.
We need to talk about it and decide together.
Yeah, like how do we want to handle this?
Right.
Okay, I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
Totally.
There's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, all this tech brings up huge questions.
Yeah, like who are we?
Where are we going?
What kind of future do we want?
And we need everyone's opinion on this.
Scientists,
Ethicists,
religious leaders,
politicians,
normal, everyday people.
Everyone.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be a lot.
But it's also super fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
And even with all the risks,
yeah,
I think this tech could really help people too.
Absolutely. It could get rid of diseases.
Yeah.
Help people live longer.
Yeah.
Make life less painful.
And I think that's really important to remember.
It is.
So this deep dive has been about so much more than just science.
Way more.
We've talked about philosophy,
religion,
ethics,
what it means to be human.
the big questions.
The really big questions.
Then it makes you realize that all these new inventions, they're not just about gadgets and gizmos.
No, they're not.
They're about our values.
Our beliefs.
The kind of world we want to leave behind.
It's about the future?
So much to think about.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
It's time to take a step back
Okay.
and really think about what we've learned.
Yeah.
So let's take a break. And when we come back,
Yeah.
we'll give our listener a nice recap.
That's good.
Okay, so we're back. And we've talked about all this wild stuff.
Yeah, ectolife cloning.
Artificial wombs, designer babies.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but
Yeah.
you know, all this stuff, it's not just sci-fi anymore.
Right, it's like right around the corner
Yeah, it could actually happen.
and could change everything.
So let's go over what we've learned.
Okay, good idea.
First up, Ectolife, this facility
Right,
that says they're going to be growing babies outside the body.
right, in these artificial wombs.
Yeah, and they're saying it could make pregnancy way easier and safer.
But we gotta be realistic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The tech just isn't there yet.
Yeah.
And it could be a long time before we see anything like this.
Plus, we got to think about the ethical stuff.
Right, the designer baby thing.
Yeah, parents picking and choosing their kids' traits.
Yeah, that could lead to some serious problems.
Like inequality and discrimination.
And even like treating life like a product.
That's scary stuff.
It is, so we need to talk about it.
Yeah, have those tough conversations.
Ask the hard questions like, what are the risks?
Who gets to use this tech?
How do we control it?
Yeah, those are big questions.
Okay, now cloning.
Okay.
That's a whole other can of worms.
I've cloned animals.
Right. Dolly the sheep.
But cloning a human?
That brings up some serious ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, like what does it even mean to be human?
Right. What about individuality?
What about identity?
Huge questions.
And remember, a clone wouldn't be a robot.
Right. They'd be a person.
Yeah, with their own thoughts and feelings.
Their own experiences.
A unique individual.
Exactly. But even then,
there are still worries.
like what if they're psychologically messed up?
What if they're exploited?
Yeah, what if they're just created for some specific purpose? We need to figure out how to prevent those things.
Yeah, and then there's the whole soul thing.
Right. Science and religion have very different views on that.
Yeah, some people believe a clone would have a soul.
Others think consciousness just comes from the brain.
It's really making us examine our beliefs.
About life, the universe, and everything.
For real, though, when I think about all this,
Yeah.
it's just mind-blowing.
It is.
Like, it could change everything.
How he makes life.
What family means.
Identity.
It's massive.
And we're not just along for the ride.
Right, we have to be part of this conversation.
Talk about it. Ask questions.
Yeah, decide what kind of future we want.
Exactly.
So here's something to think about.
Okay.
What if we could clone humans safely and ethically? Would it make us less special?
Or would it help us understand each other better?
It's a question with no easy answers.
It really is.
All right, folks. That's our deep dive.
Wow, what a journey.
It has been a journey.
Through science and ethics and philosophy.
Big questions, big ideas.
I hope everyone learned something new.
Yeah, keep thinking, keep asking questions.
And keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time.